Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining us on this short webinar where Dr. Ocker will advise on how to amalgamate live blood analysis into your practice. Thank you very much for sending in your questions. I'll be posing them to Dr. Ocker in a few minutes. I'm Elizabeth, your presenter, and I'll be introducing Dr. Ocker shortly, but I'd just like to remind you that the webinar is being recorded and that you will receive the recording tomorrow. And just a quick reminder regarding viewing the webinar and asking questions. You should see a panel on your screen. There's a panel in there for asking questions. So please type your questions into the box there, into the panel, and we'll endeavour to answer the questions throughout. If we can't answer them, then we'll do a Q&A session at the end. And so please locate the questions box and be ready to put your questions in there. And also, please locate and click on the full screen button to play the webinar in full screen. This is the best way to view the webinar. That's usually the third button down on your panel. So hopefully everyone's okay with that. Let's get started. I'm going to be posing your questions now to Dr. Ocker and keeping my eye on the questions panel, and look forward to speaking to you later. So over to you, Dr. Ocker.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So before we start with the webinar, perhaps I should just mention for practitioners who have not yet studied live blood analysis and are considering, this will most likely be one of the most valuable tests or modalities that you will add to your practice. You know, as practitioners working in the field of natural medicine and nutrition, we need something to allow us to identify and track specific imbalances in our clients' health. And because we are working on a completely different level from conventional medicine, the normal laboratory tests and investigations are of very little use to us. So we often are at a disadvantage, you know, because we don't always have the necessary tools to analyze and monitor our clients, and often rely on subjective information from the client as well as our own experience. But in many cases, we are working in the dark because we're not able to get the objective information that we need to confirm our suspicions or to point us in the correct direction in every case. Now, live blood analysis is the answer to this issue. You know, it identifies the specific imbalances that we as natural health practitioners need to identify to work effectively with our clients. So we're able to see exactly where the client's problems are stemming from, and you're also able to show this to your client in a very simple way that they will be able to understand, and you can measure and track the progress taking place during treatment. There really isn't anything else like it out there, and I believe that every practitioner working in the field of natural health should be using it.
Yes, otherwise they're working in the dark, aren't they?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, you know, just like a dentist trying to work without having access to an X-ray machine, you know, it is possible to do it, but having access to X-rays just makes the dentist's work so much easier. And most patients also would prefer to see a dentist that has all the necessary tools available to him or her.
Absolutely. What about practitioners who are already using another form of analysis, iridology, for example, or some type of biofeedback test? Will it be useful for them to add live blood analysis to their practice too?
Well, yes, definitely. We actually have many practitioners who use other types of machines or investigations who then add live blood analysis to their practices. It's very beneficial in these cases because other tests tend to lack the visual impact that live blood analysis has. People connect much better with a picture of their blood cells rather than a picture of the iris or an image created by a software program on a computer. It's also much easier to explain to someone how live blood analysis works, as opposed to explaining a biofeedback quantum device. So people are also more easily convinced by what they see in a live blood analysis session. Practitioners also found it useful to have something more physical and visual, to show their clients during the course of treatment, to show them the changes and the improvements taking place. Now, the other fascinating thing is that all these alternative investigations that conventional medicine still claim to be, pseudoscience science and unreliable, tend to highlight very similar imbalances in the same patient. It's really quite incredible that these tests, they work on completely different levels and mechanisms, and yet there's such a great deal of correlation between the findings.
So practitioners can then confirm their findings this way and have more confidence in their analysis then, is that right?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, the more information you have, the easier it becomes to work with your clients. Now, live blood analysis is great because it highlights the most important areas that need attention, the main health priorities of the client. Other tests, such as the biofeedback type devices, often give so much information that it is difficult to decide on where to start.
I see. So using live blood analysis alongside these other tests then makes it much easier to manage your cases, is that right?
Yes, definitely. And, we also have practitioners who only use live blood analysis, and they are very successful in practice. But, it is always better and great just to have more information.
Okay, great. Thank you. So on to the questions from our attendees. I'll start with question 1. I'm already in practice and already spend an hour with a patient in the first consultation. How can I add live blood analysis to my existing practice?
Right. Well, a live blood session takes approximately 30 minutes. So this would just need to be added onto the first appointment time. And then you'd have to charge, according to the time spent with the client. It's best to do it this way because the information gained from the analysis will be extremely valuable for you. And you'd obviously want to use live blood analysis on every one of your patients.
Can I have someone trained to do the test and then they give me a report and or the results?
Yes, definitely. So this is also an alternative solution to the previous question, and some practitioners actually do this as well. We have some integrative medicine practitioners and endocrinologists working in functional medicine that have someone trained in live blood analysis in their practices that they then get their patients to see before their first appointment with them. So the test is then charged for separately, and the analyst sends a report to the practitioner.
Okay, how much do people charge for a live blood analysis session?
Well, this depends on where you're based, really. Prices can vary from about £100 in central London to a fraction of that, depending on the country that you're practicing in. Generally, it's a good idea just to look at what other natural health practitioners charge near you for about a 1-hour appointment.
And do you charge less for a follow-up visit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So usually we do, but it also depends on the amount of time spent with the client. Now, the analysis itself would still take approximately 30 minutes, but since there's generally less to explain during the follow-up appointment, the entire session could be around 45 minutes, instead of an hour.
Okay, and is it necessary to do both live and dry sample with a follow-up appointment?
Yes, yes. Ideally, after the first appointment, it's very useful to also look at the dry blood sample. So for the first follow-up appointment, we definitely would recommend doing this. But changes are much slower generally in the dry blood sample, so you could look at scheduling a dry blood sample with every second follow-up. Just to track the progress in that sample. It is important, though, essential really, to do a dark field analysis with each follow-up appointment. So in terms of the live blood, you would look at the live blood in bright field and dark field for each appointment, because there are a number of really important anomalies that need to be monitored that are only visible in dark field.
Thank you. My microscope is not set up for dark field. Can I start using live blood analysis in my practice without dark field?
Well, without dark field, you would only really be able to do a live blood sample in bright field and the dry blood sample, which is done in bright field anyway. Now, this is a difficult one because there are many very important anomalies that are really quite common to see in practice that are only visible in dark field. So you'll still be able to identify many anomalies, and you will be able to help a fairly good percentage of your clients, but you will also be missing a number of very important anomalies, which will affect your results, in practice in the long term. So it is worthwhile in the long term to upgrade to a good dark field system, since you will be using it, every day in your practice.
Thank you. How frequent can follow-up visits be to accentuate changes in the blood?
All right, so in most cases in practice, we set follow-up appointments at about a monthly interval, so every 4 weeks or so. And during that time, that 4-week period, the clients would be on a specific protocol, and then you're able to follow up after 4 weeks to look at the degree of changes that have taken place. Now, in some cases, you can do follow-ups more frequently. So in cases where we start the process with a 2-week detox protocol, we would typically have the client on a detox protocol then for 2 weeks, and they would come in, immediately after that, 2 weeks later, for us to actually have a look at the blood and then decide on the next step. But generally, in most cases, except for the detox protocols, it's at 4-week intervals.
And is 30 minutes sufficient for all of that?
Absolutely. The analysis itself, the live blood, bright field and dark field, as well as the dry blood analysis. The analysis itself would take about 30 minutes. It does take a bit of time, and practice to get to the point where you're able to analyze the samples in that time frame. But in most cases, after a bit of practice, you're able to complete the analysis within about 30 minutes.
Thank you. Is the detox protocol on the training site?
Yes, absolutely.
Detox.
Absolutely. So the detox protocol would be in the manual under the anomalies. So any of the anomalies where a toxicity issue is implicated, the detox protocol would be listed there under the recommended interventions. And then in addition to the detox protocol, we obviously would use a detox diet as well, which has been provided in the diets folder as well in the training course materials.
Okay, Saf is saying, can we email the 2-week detox protocol? Could we put it on the Facebook page or something?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely do that.
Okay, we'll get that put on the Facebook page tomorrow, yeah.
Mm.
How much more advanced training is there beyond the basic training?
Well, the basic training is really quite comprehensive. You would be able to help most people in practice with the information provided in the standard 12-week online course. There is an advanced course available. It's more focused on examples from practice and dealing with very specific type of conditions, the type of anomalies to look for in those conditions, the type of protocols that we used, and we actually have examples of actual cases during a treatment protocol as well. And there's some specific advice on case management and so on that we cover in the advanced course as well. But in terms of the actual analysis, what anomalies we specifically look for, that's all provided in the standard course.
Thank you. And I've heard that live blood analysis can't be practiced in some places. Will I be able to use it legally?
Well, we have people from all over the world, who have completed our training course, and they are using live blood analysis in their practices. Now, there are some restrictions about advertising in some countries, specifically about what claims you can't make in your advertising. Now, since it's not a diagnostic tool, it's generally not really regulated, but it is important to avoid making any claims. We don't diagnose with live blood analysis. And the cases where there have been legal ramifications for practitioners, it's cases where the practitioners made, medical claims. It also depends on your scope of practice. If you're able to make a diagnosis within your scope of practice, then it would be just another tool that you would use during your assessment of a patient to come to a diagnosis. The other issue to check is the regulation in your country around the drawing of blood. Now, in some countries, you actually need a phlebotomy certificate to prick the finger, but in most cases, this is actually exempt because, a finger prick is a very different procedure, from drawing blood from a vein with a needle.
Thank you. And how do you explain to patients who have found on Google that live blood analysis is bogus?
All right. Well, we do have a separate webinar on that subject where we actually go through the details on, the controversy around live blood analysis, where it comes from and what sort of factors to bear in mind there. But it is, this is a tool that fits into the realm of natural medicine or complementary medicine. The anomalies that are identified in live blood analysis, I mentioned that it's not a medical diagnostic tool. The actual anomalies and imbalances or conditions that we're able to identify in live blood analysis are not really conditions that are recognized by conventional medicine. We're able to see levels of oxidative stress, the need for detoxification, deficiencies in specific vitamins, stress on specific organ systems, things like candida, those types of imbalances that conventional medicine is actually mostly in denial about. So for them to accept live blood analysis as an actual valid tool, they would then have to accept that these other conditions are valid as well. That's one of the reasons, but there are a whole range of other reasons. So generally, if this comes up in practice, we just discuss the principles around live blood analysis, and that it is a very different type of technique from conventional blood tests. There are studies, and most of the controversy around it is based on misinformation.
And we have a video on why live blood analysis gets bad press. So we'll put that on the Facebook page tomorrow as well. And how much space will I need to set up live blood analysis in my practice? And what is the best way to have it set up?
All right, well, the microscope system can be set up just on the side of your desk. It doesn't really require a lot of space, about 400 millimeters or 15 to 16 inches on the side of a standard desk would actually be enough for the system. Now, usually it is set up with a separate screen to allow your clients to have a larger view of their blood when they're seated across the desk from you. And then you don't have to move your laptop around for them to actually see their blood on the screen. Now, one of the advantages of the HDMI USB camera that our HDMI LED microscopes are equipped with is that it has a separate HDMI video output, which then allows you to connect a separate monitor directly to the camera, which gives your clients a very nice full screen view of their blood. It is actually a good idea. It's not essential, but it is a good idea to have a separate screen, since the picture would be larger, on a separate screen than on a standard laptop screen.
Thank you. So if someone is struggling with recurrent vaginal yeast infection, will there for sure be yeast presenting in the live blood?
Yeah, so in my experience with practice, I've had quite a large number of patients with this, and in all of those cases, they've all presented with candida signs in their live blood samples as well. So the understanding of candida in natural medicine is quite different from conventional medicine, where it's seen to be just a localized infection. If there's vaginal thrush, it's seen to just be localized only in that area. But in natural medicine, we actually understand that it's more systemic, and the root of it really lies in the digestive system, and we can clearly see those signs, when we look at the live blood samples of those patients.
Thank you. Am I allowed to advertise live blood analysis?
Well, this depends on whether there are restrictions about it in your country. I know that there are some restrictions in the UK. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it is important to avoid making medical claims. Now, we do have an example of a brochure or an advert in the training materials provided with the training course.
Thank you. And will I be able to advertise this to other practitioners as a service, that they can refer their patients to me and I send them a report?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good idea. And there are many practitioners who do this. And the information is very valuable for anyone working in any natural health type of modality, especially detox clinics, natural cancer specialists, fitness professionals, trainers, and so on.
And I've recently completed the live blood analysis training course and haven't started using live blood analysis yet. What is the best way to get started?
Well, firstly, it's important just to ensure that you are proficient with the technique, so practice as much as possible, behind the microscope before seeing any paying clients. Know the most important anomalies, especially those on the wall charts. And then if you already have your premises, decide on your pricing and get started. Some people have a launch special when they start, and you can also market to your own network as well as social media. Local newspapers are a good idea, other practitioners that you network with, as well as Google advertising. Google advertising is actually very useful, because most people these days tend to do a Google search when they're looking for a new service or product, and the results are also specific to the area, so quite useful.
I work from more than one clinic. Can I travel with the microscope?
Well, yes, it is possible with our microscopes, as they're built to be quite hardy, and they're not very heavy, but it depends on the type of microscope that you have, and also how comfortable you are and familiar you are with it, and the microscope settings. If something does move, you would be able to, you should be able to actually work out what what it is that needs to be adjusted.
What is the lifetime of your microscope?
Well, the microscopes have a standard 2-year warranty. The microscope systems themselves, they're quite hard wearing and quite reliable. So they're used for many, many years. I have a microscope that's more than 10 years old. There isn't really much that can go wrong with it. There has been some upgrades in the last few years. So the microscopes that we have currently have a high strength LED light source. But in terms of the microscope itself, there hasn't really been much that's sort of changed fundamentally on the microscopes. Quite a lot of development is taking place in sort of imaging. So we do expect the cameras at some point to be upgraded as well. But in terms of lifespan, it's many years. There's very little that could go wrong, and there's these systems also don't require a service or anything like that. They basically run without with minimal servicing.
So the actual microscope itself doesn't wear out. You just get to add on different components. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So, the other similar microscopes that have a similar build quality that have been around for longer, like the Zeiss microscopes and so on, people have them for 20 years or more without any major issues. So the microscope itself would last a very long time, but during the time you might want to upgrade to a better camera, or if there's another improvement coming along in the illumination of the microscope, for example, that might be upgraded.
Rajesh is asking, do you provide the carrying case with your microscope? Because this way I can travel on an airline with it.
Yeah, we don't supply the carry cases, but we can recommend suppliers that would be able to help you with that. There are some travel cases on wheels that are actually quite good. Those the large ones with the sort of hard plastic, and then what people usually do is they just get foam cut to size. That they're able to fit the microscope into that. That's a fairly easy way to do that, and obviously would provide the protection that the microscope needs with flights. If you travel by car, you can just travel with it without a case. But obviously, if it's going on a plane, it would need to be packaged quite carefully.
Thank you. Safa's saying, I gather the only danger for the microscope is dust.
Well, yes. Obviously, if you're moving with it, the greatest risk is bumping it or accidentally dropping it. But in terms of just day-to-day use, dust could play a role. The components are sealed though, so if you keep everything assembled as it is, then dust won't really get into any of the essential components. You may have a little bit of dust collecting on the stage, or on the condenser if the microscope is left open without the dust cover. But those components can be quite easily wiped with a dry, clean cloth.
Thank you. Can we share a supplier for the travel case for the microscope? Do you have something off the top of your head, or do we need to put that on the Facebook page tomorrow?
I think we'd have to put that on the Facebook page. I know that we did send some details to one of our other attendees previously who asked about it, so I'd have to have a look at that email.
Okay, Rajesh is saying, will you provide where to get carrying cases from Amazon or other websites? I live in the USA. So we'll put something on the Facebook page tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Okay. How long does shipping take for a microscope, Kate is asking?
Well, it depends on stock. So we usually do try to keep enough stock so we're able to ship as soon as we receive payments from attendees. And in that case, it's shipped by DHL, and the transit time is usually about 3 to 5 days.
Thank you. Now, I can't remember if I've asked this one or not. I'm considering offering this as a service to a few of our local health stores. Yes, I've asked that, haven't I? Is this a good way to get
No, I
started and
don't
get
think we've covered
clients?
this one. I
Okay.
don't think we've covered that one, no.
The question is, I'm considering offering this as a service to a few of our local health stores. Is this a good way to get started and to get clients?
Well, yes, it definitely is, but it is also important to just ensure that there is some privacy. So an office in the store, or at least a screened off area, but it is quite a good arrangement because we're able to identify deficiencies and imbalances in the system, and then usually the client would be referred to the health store for those supplements. Now, what practitioners usually do with the setup is that they do a basic type of analysis in the store, and then they have the clients come to see them for a more detailed analysis and appointment at their own practices.
Thank you. And I'd like to know, what are the additional costs in setting up a live blood analysis practice beyond that of the microscope which you offer, e.g. slides, HDMI connector, TV monitor, or is a laptop good enough? Lancets, etc.
All right. Well, the largest expense is definitely the microscope system. The consumables that you'd be using are generally fairly inexpensive. It depends on where you're based, but the average cost of the consumables per client is usually less than $2. So based on what is available on Amazon, we last worked it out at $1.65. But this would obviously be even less, if you're ordering your supplies directly from a laboratory wholesaler. Now, you would also need to show your clients their samples on a screen. Now, the standard entry-level computer would usually work. It is a good idea to have an additional separate monitor. It's not essential, but it does help. And we recommend any LED monitor larger than 22 inches. Now, the cost of these also depend on where you're based, but on average, a 24-inch monitor could cost around $100 or so. The other cost is, of course, the disposal of the used slides and lancets. Now, because they are contaminated with blood, one has to have them disposed of correctly. There are medical waste companies who specialize in this and who would then provide you with a medical shops bin. Now, the cost also of this varies, but since only the used lancets and slides go into the bin, it does take a bit of time to fill them up.
Yeah, this is something that most acupuncturists have. They have a contract with a disposal company in London. The cost is something between 30 and 50 GB pounds a month, probably around $40–50 a month at most. So they will come and collect it. Christina's saying, what is the best length of time to record the live portion of the test to make a good analysis for each sample?
All right, generally we spend about 10 minutes or so looking at the live blood in bright field, about another 10–15 minutes looking at the live sample in dark field, and then the remainder of the time, about 5 minutes or so, for the dry blood sample.
Okay, thank you. So that seems to be the end of the questions. Any more questions? Please put them in the box and we will answer them. So thank you very much for answering those questions, Dr. Ocker. We are currently enrolling for the September training course. If you enroll now, you will receive recordings from the previous training course to study over the summer months in preparation for September. If you have any other questions, that you'd like to send in to us. Rajesh is saying, is dark field also done in dry blood?
No, the dark field is only done in the, with the live blood sample. Dry blood is assessed in bright field only.
Lovely. And Safa is saying, is that the advanced training course? No, that's the regular September training course. The advanced training course is a series of 6 webinars. It's not actually a live training course, but I will send you information on that, Safa. Just make a note. September is the regular training course, which we run 3 times a year. So drop us an email if you have any other questions at admin@livebloodonline.com. And on average, how many lancet pricks does a client get at each sitting?
At each, with each analysis, it's only one prick of the finger, so it would be 1 lancet. We usually use 2 slides, the 1 slide for the live sample and 1 slide for the dry blood sample, and then one of each of the other consumables, the cover slips, alcohol swabs, and so on.
Thank you. And Safa is saying, many thanks for this much needed webinar. I received my microscope yesterday. Many thanks. What monitor do you recommend to show live blood analysis for clients?
Well, this really just depends on you. It is a full HD camera that's supplied with the HDMI LED system, so you can go with up to quite a large size. We've had them connected to an HDMI input on an overhead projector and had the images projected onto a wall, and it was really quite amazing. So there's not really much pixelation at that at that level either. So it just depends on your office setup, but we would usually recommend anything from about 24 inches and up, a standard LED type of computer monitor with an HDMI input.
Okay, Safa is asking for a link, so perhaps we can send her a link to what monitor we recommend tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, definitely we can do that.
Okay, I will send you a reminder email. Okay, so that seems to be the end of the questions. Unless you have any more, please put them in the box. Rajesh is saying, Dr. Ocker, you are the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so any questions, drop us an email at admin@livebloodonline.com. And do you have anything to add to that, Dr. Ocker?
I think just in terms of the microscopes, if there are also any specific questions about those, welcome to send us an email as well. It is obviously what we specialize in, so if there's any question that anything you're unsure about, let us know.
Okay. Laura is saying, thank you, this is very helpful. And Saf is saying, is wearing regular gloves enough for our protection?
Yes. Usually we recommend just using gloves, 2 gloves. Really not essential to use anything else. Obviously now these days with the pandemic, you would be using your masks and so on for the other reason. But in terms of the risk with the blood, it's actually quite minimal. It's just a finger prick. So gloves are usually sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Okay, right. So we look forward to seeing you in September if you're joining us for the September training course. And everybody else, we wish you the best of luck in adding livelihood analysis to your practice. So thank you very much for joining us. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Ocker?
No, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Ocker. Thank you and
Thank you
goodbye.
very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.